The major is over. Vitality are dominant. Can anyone actually stop them? A number of teams are going to try, but before that, let's talk about how we saw the Mongolz almost make history. We saw the death of FaZe and the washing of my goat live on stage. Trust me, I tried to help FaZe in every way that I could. We saw wrung out Torzy both emotionally and physically. We saw Spirit lose to that Torzy. We saw Na'Vi. Furia look undeniable with a young Opera who can only grow over time and a refreshed rifle core. We saw Pain finally do something after I had spent all season hoping they would and saying so much about them and many more. Well, I've been radio silent for a bit now due to extended travel, being at the major, Japan, and working on this! That is right! A bang average database for parsing demos. Shout out to Oppie. And after working on this for a bit, I had to decided to take some advice and make something before making it good. So here we are. I've made something, made it slightly better, and hopefully this can be a great starting point for me to start collecting information long term. But let's give a rundown on my thoughts on our top 8 teams. Mostly related to the immediate aftermath as well, we'll touch on, especially with a couple of roster moves already confirmed, as well as some insights related to each team specifically, just off a very surface level analysis of some statistics available. I do intend to do heat maps later down the line. Those just each take an hour and a half to generate right now because I'm dealing with over 7 million different points and I'm working on improving the efficiency of that. But there you go. Isn't that great? Isn't it overwhelming? Yes, that's the entire major, stages 1 through 3 and playoffs, all taken and plotted and calculated for each player on a KPR versus APR or ADR graphic. Kills per round versus average damage per round. While simplistic, it does allow us to take an initial distinction between empty calorie fraggers and people who are actually turning the damage that they are doing into kills, similar to a statistic that I am playing around with right now about rifle efficiency for who's doing the most damage per bullet in terms of who's actually connecting versus just spraying and praying. Very noticeably, obviously, Donk is far and away the highest and best producing player at the event. Better than any. I actually had to turn off my outlier clipping in order to get it to not cut him off of this. They were not a playoff team, but I also did run some charts that I'll quickly badu for the 2-3 teams, just to show you guys where they're gonna land in this. But because they had a lot of games as well, and if you were a team that came from a previous stage who went 2-3 as well, you could have a lot of maps, so it'd be fun to highlight, obviously specifically Legacy as well. But now that you've had a solid minute looking at this big amorphous blob, if you want to see those charts that I brought up that I'm not going to discuss in detail right now, you can check them out on social medias. Now that you have like a good view of what this whole overall mess looks like, let's start highlighting some individual teams and positions within it. For right now, let's talking about an actual distinction here between fragging IGLs. Because if we go and highlight just our IGLs who made playoffs and borderline playoffs, we can see an immediate distinction between them, and even without performing any form of clustering on it, I think you can tell what the grouping seems to be. First of all, Blitz is a cut above the rest. This guy is a major grand finalist IGL who's up there fragging as like a decent second/third rifler statistically. He is undeniable, and if Mongolz can maintain their form for the second half of the season, I think Launder said it first, someone Blitz to top 20. Blitz for top 20. Absolutely. Holy crud. Up there, obviously, with him are Apex, Big Uzera, and Lux, who I think is their IGL. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Correct me. Note, obviously, traditionally, the classic style, heavier strat IGLs are down towards the bottom with, Alexi B and Kerrigan bringing up the rears in KPR and ADR respectively. Also, Fallen somehow doing better than all these guys on a rifle. That's fun. That's fun. Swapping over to a similar highlight is our Oppers, which, some quick before we go into it, despite ZywOo being included in this, he actually has the second lowest percentage out of any what I would call Opper at the major, according to obviously my statistics. He only had about 26 to 28% of his kills throughout the tournament with an op, and he's the second lowest out of all of them, other than CjDoes, who's at 22, who I will always pull for as a phenomenal hybrid. And that's kind of cool to see, but taking a look at the chart highlighting obviously the borderline and actual playoff oppers, it's pretty interesting to see that despite the jokes about Simple being washed, and despite, his floor clearly being much lower than it used to be, you don't need any statistics to tell you that. The eye test of, him not hitting that clip, obligatorily at the top of Mirage. He had a couple of shots that he would just normally hit otherwise from what we expect from him, but he still produced statistically despite the discrepancies in his decision-making or his ability to connect his decision-making to his skill. He kept up there with, Shiro, and I don't think, Shiro and 910, who 910 also was a lights-out opper for the entire tournament, I don't think Brokey would have delivered that level. Now, Brokey might have had better decision-making on a moment-to-moment basis because he wouldn't be trying to cash such large checks or write such large checks with his skills, but I also want to give a shout out to Icy for outperforming Wonderful, because even though Navi had one more game than them, barely so. I just shit on Icy a lot because I just shit on him a lot, so I'm giving him that. There you go. We have there's just two categories to give you more of an idea about how this layout can be used to categorize people or group people. We're not going to talk about entry fraggers. Sorry, this is already long enough. Maybe another day, or maybe I'll just do a small breakdown for that on Twitter. But let's start going into some general thoughts on the performance of teams, as well as a fun highlight of them within the overall statistical grouping, which can allow you to get some further insights about who performed, how they performed, and how their damage is actually translating into kills on an average that would impact the outcome of a game. Because despite there being objectives, kills win Counterstrike. Looking first, obviously, at the first team to go down, going from the bracket of the playoffs, we are going to look at Furia. And Furia, honestly, incredibly surprised me for the entire time of this tournament. They looked lights out, and their path may have been what it have been. I'm not going to comment too much on paths. So I'll put them here with the chart. It has been incredible, at least in my opinion, to see Yekindar get this individual resurgence after his time rotting away in Liquid, where a lot of people tend to do that. It's great to see Yuri actually have a standout performance, because he, back when you think of Furia at their peak, and while I'm obviously not, I always just think of the, drop safe Yuri, and there's the Henny version, and then there's the later version that was post-COVID that was still decently competitive and made like top four at Rio, but that was whatever. I think of like Yuri just not having been here and present and making such a notable impact in such a long time. And from watching the games, obviously, he had a fantastic event, in my opinion, and it was great to see them. And their rifle core obviously shows that they are delivering and dealing damage in the way that they need. And in comparison to the IGLs that we talked about before, Fallen's actually not doing too bad as a rifling IGL. They're able to make Fallen was in the quarters of a major in the year of our Lord 2025 as a rifling IGL, just saying. Additionally, the obvious thing that was one of their huge limitations, and even if you just go watch their elimination game, Molodoy, I'm so sorry. Alashir, I'm so sorry. Molodoy absolutely, disappeared in their playoff games, but he overall, for this year in his premiere so far in Tier 1, or Tier 1.5 if you don't want to call Furia Tier 1, because they're not, Tier 1's definition has been fun. In a global org that is higher than Tier 2.5, let's say, Tier 1, we can call it a Tier 1.5 org, Molodoy is still adjusting to Tier 1. He has shown real sharpness and real ability to deliver in moments when they need him. And if the major stage was just a bit too much this time, well, for your first season up here with us in the big leagues, I think that's completely fine. And, you'll grow from it. It was a fantastic experience for the team, and they can sort of pour all of their experience into him as the rookie. It he has an elite opper to mentor him as well in Fallen, because at one point in the world, Fallen was the opper. It was really truly nice to see Furia put up this type of performance, and despite their loss to Pain, who I'll speak on later, I'm very excited to see what they will do in the coming season. Now, FaZe. I miss you. I love you. The most entertaining team in Counterstrike. All around solid numbers from the team, representing the sort of classic 4-star constellation plus Kerrigan, all the way down, giving the strats and giving everything. Unfortunately, despite the positive performance, as one would see, statistically across the board, they don't really tell the visual tale of the calling and individual decision making. They had the firepower, but they absolutely displayed some questionable individual decision making, and I would say there were a couple questionable calls in there. And obviously, I am bumfuck nobody when it comes to learning how to call when calling in the quarterfinals of a major. Who am I to criticize Kerrigan, right? So it might be a self-report. Obviously, Simple also had a few egregious moments of him making some very questionable decisions. I do not know what will hold for the future FaZe, as it has been indicated that Simple has not been purchased at this time. But I am so glad that we were able to give Elige a welcome home. Being in the arena for that game was one of the most unforgettable experiences of my life, and we got to give him a giant roar for his hero moment at the end of the first half of Anubis, which was so electric.
Con, blitz! Oh, he's ready! Catches the headshot necessary. It's Elige, last round of the half. Everything to play for, everything to be gained. The flash, the swing, he's got it! The first is his! Oh! He's got it! The star stands up on home soil and gives FaZe the edge as we head to halftime!
The next to fall was Na'Vi. Now, this is no shock, really. Na'Vi did not win this major. What a surprise. But as the team that won the major this time last year, or the first major last year, making playoffs was a success, but by all rights, Na'Vi had a fairly quiet and non-existent season. The team that was the team of the year showed that they could still hang and occasionally show up in playoffs, but they were never really challenging for trophies. And now, obviously, it has come out that JL will be stepping down and Makaze will be stepping into the team as well. It'll be interesting to see how that changes things, because statistically, JL was their best player at this event, and Alexi B was bringing up they won the major with the least rounds. They're a no-star team, so to speak, but the star of the no-star team, the X factor that won them that major and had them so many rounds that delivered, is now no longer with them. So will Ima be stepping up more? Is Wonderful going to do better now that he doesn't have a perm? Is Makaze going to get pure star roles and he's going to be the guy? What are we going to do here? I also, obviously kind of have to call out Bit for his lackluster performance overall for what we expect from, a two-time major winner who has been a part of, two really great teams. And, he's the reign, he's the, legacy member of the org. He ain't going anywhere. So hopefully we can see Bit start to pick himself back up to the levels of expectations we have for him. Beyond that, obviously, Alexi and Blade feel like they can work together. So hopefully that works out well. Other than that, hopefully the Makaze move brings them back the relevancy. Because Na'Vi is one of our most important organizations historically and just in terms of prestige, and I need them to be challenging for trophies. All right, Team Spirit. We also already have changes in Team Spirit with Magix being gone, and they're bringing in Zwei, who actually did participate in this major. And it's going to be rather interesting to see how things play out, because it's been fairly telling in the structure of the team, even since before they won the major, that Donk is putting up some of the best, if not the best, individual performance in the history of Counter-Strike, and you can't win events and you can't win the major. You won the last major, yeah, but that came from a life game from the guy you just cut, who actually was your third best player at this event. Even if he had some really rough moments, he was Zontix didn't really do a ton. I've not been impressed with Chopper. He had his really one good breath nose event, strip nose thing at the beginning of the year, and then just has not delivered. And, Shiro, I'll always go to bat for Shiro. I love Shiro. 10 out of 10. Love you, guy. Love you, guy. They made a choice between Zontix and Magix, and the guy who's been on the team for a very long time, back when Spirit wasn't even a real trophy contender. They would occasionally show up, in the quarterfinals of the major and give us some of the scrappiest games you've ever seen in your entire life. But now they're the peak of the CIS region for now. So we'll be seeing how they consolidate with their new talent. I still think they potentially need to change Chopper or bring in something to fix the systemic issue, because IGL wise, Apex is fragging up there with a reasonable, as we highlighted before, fragging IGL level on top of being tactically sound. So, is this addition going to be enough to cover that firepower difference? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not sure, but who knows, man? This is pretty damning again for something that another change that Vitality has brought on the scene, as firepower now needs to be raised. So next is motherfucking Pain Gaming. Love these guys. At the beginning of the year, I said that I think that they were going to be the strongest team coming out of our hemisphere for the year. They did jack diddly squat for the entire year to switch in DGT for Kawez, and then they finally do something at the major with the terrible format. And whatever, man. It was great to see. I was there for it 100%, man, out there screaming and pointing at Snow. He obviously did not have the greatest statistical performance, but with a really strong group of players performing, with DGT and Kawa, or not D, blah, 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 with DGT slotting in exceptionally easily and faster, with Big Uzera being up there with the fragging IGLs, with NQZ showing some world-class lights-out opping, with NQZ showing some truly elite world-class opping at times, like genuinely jaw-dropping opping, with Davideus also slowly delivering while still playing a little bit under, actually, eye test wise, to what I would normally expect from him as well. If Snow can continue to grow as the young anchor that he is, while also being the sort of glue and mental guy, they will be challenging as a consistent top 10 team, an occasional playoff berther in the second half of this year. I'm really hopeful that they do so. It was a fantastic run out of the entire guys, and they very easily could have been in the major finals on a different day. Congratulations to Payne. Absolutely thrilled about that. Mouz. Oh, man. Torzy. Buddy, you're down there with the IGLs. Oh, that's your opper. Also, Jimmy up there with Jimmy has same stats as multiple of our fragging IGLs, by the way. Exertion and Spinks, dude, absolutely creaming it down the line, doing everything they could to try and hyper carry this event. Absolutely excited to see Spinks back to a truly elite level. He's been one of my favorite for a long time, since him and Hades originally came up through ENTS, and then obviously to Vitality, where he got his major. This team, how much more time does Mouz need? We've been saying that for years. And we've chopped and changed them, I get that, but it's just kind of been this perennial choking / whatever, and it's really disappointing to see, especially in the case of Torzy, because Torzy was making a case for himself over the course of the earlier part of this year about being a somewhat elite, if not truly elite opera in terms of being top 5, top 3, and it was not solidified, but he was beginning to make that case, and with a performance like this across an entire event, it sort of kills that conversation dead in the water. And even if he has a very, they would need to win the major in the next half of the year for this not to be a damning thing that he sort of just crashed and burned at the major. And also Brolin, again, for all the firepower that we talk about him potentially doing. Obviously, he's actually being grouped more with the traditional IGLs in terms of his grouping in stats. So you have two truly phenomenal riflers out there. It's just a matter of, I guess, the rest of Mouz stepping up. But that's kind of the story we've always had with Mouz. So only time will tell. Yay, man. Like, next, the Mongolz, baby. What a, on this channel, I have spoken at length about my opinion on the Mongolz. I spoke about Senzu about 6 months ago. I have my video breaking down both them and Aurora at a midpoint in the season as they were both trending in different directions. As they were initially alongside Aurora, perennial playoff, or not perennial, that's not how that works. There was a consistent playoff team at the beginning portion of the year. Then with the landslide introduction of Falcons with Monacy, they were slowly edged out, and a lot of that was truly due to Senzu's lack of T-side impact. He had truly elite rifling prowess. It just was not, he just was inconsistent on T-sides and actually was not as good as his other teammates on T-sides for a majority of the year. If you want, this video has much more simpler charts from an earlier time when I didn't even have the database and I just parsed those. But he truly delivered on his potential in this event in the ways that I had been hoping. He had some incredibly impactful rounds. He had some rounds he should not have won. As you can see, while he is not ZywOo, Donk, he is reaching towards that end of the pack of truly high ADR, high this. And this guy's less than 20. This guy's less than 20 years old. He will grow. He will be incredibly good. And 910 absolutely lights out. That ace was one of the most electric things I've ever witnessed. And also, yeah, we're never getting rid of Mirage, guys. We're never getting rid of Mirage. It's sort of like the FaZe play on Dust 2 last major, the last burst of FaZe magic. We can never get rid of Dust 2 now. Fantastic. Great. I joke, but the true limiting factor for this entire event, was Mizinho, who is typically up there with Blitz in 910 actually as a really, really solid, like 1.05 rifler. He has, if you can go watch that video I mentioned before, you'll see points in his charts where he has almost flat T-side production because he's just that consistent. So for him he made a couple of poor decisions, lost a couple of fights he shouldn't lose. I think goes at the highest level, it's a game of inches. And on any other day, this was Mongolz major. They won the first map. They won the first map, and if they had been able to recover in any capacity on the next two, that's the Mongolz major. Being up a map in a best of 3 major final, another day, that's your map. Shout out to Techno as well, even though it has he is sort of grouped much lower and his stats will not tell it to you. Every single frag he had mattered this event. Every single frag he had was him arriving at the correct time, at the opportune moment, even doubling up where he absolutely shouldn't, historically never did. It was an incredible event out of Techno. Just phenomenal stuff. And the Mongolz have finally broken through and gotten a taste of true playoff hunger. And when they played, in the arena, they got booed a bit one day, and they didn't let it shake them. They have shown that they truly have some playoff roots or muscles that they're finally developing. And the next season is their oyster. I don't think we are too far away. Obviously with more minor events similar to the PGL events and more TOs coming in every day, I don't think we're too far away from seeing the Mongolz pick up a much better trophy. And that's exciting to say none the least. Last Vitality. Who else but Vitality? You'll notice their entire team is almost above the goddamn ADR average. You'll know, obviously, that ZywOo is in the stratosphere. Rops is also up there with the elite riflers, making them, once again, a truly unfair duo, with even less distance between them than Donk and Shiro, but a similar, reverse relationship, even though ZywOo opper 26% of his kills with an op. But Mezzy being absolutely a rock and becoming one of the all-time role players. Apex being a fragging IGL, absolutely entering himself into history as one of the most prolific players to ever touch Counterstrike in terms of being decorated. He beat Dupree's record of, most trophies overall, not major trophies. Obviously, Dupree still has 5, but much like I mentioned here, what we're looking at, it's historically when he won his major as an entry fragger when he played a long time ago in the sort of what was for a very long time coming out of the COVID era, sort of almost mythical period that a lot of people look back on of like all the old legends and all the old players at the peaks of their powers. That's not the peak of Apex's career any longer. This is the peak of his career now. He's a 2-time major winning Grand Slam IGL. That's with a perfect season, pretty much. With a perfect season and a still ongoing best of 3 win streak. Where he contributes. He also contributed individually. ZywOo was non-existent. Not in his, it's still ZywOo, he did good. But ZywOo was pretty much non-existent in that major final, I will say. Apex won them that trophy, especially on Mirage. Apex was fragging his way to victory at this age. FlameZ had some bad maps, and then he'd turn it around and dominate the next. And so he's their entry fragger. Who cares if he has a little bit lower? He's absolutely cleaning clocks, entering and creating so much space for one of the most disgusting teams in the history of Counterstrike. And God help us if anyone's actually capable of, doing anything about it. It's all the superlatives are kind of dead at this point because what else can you say? The only thing that if they hadn't lost to this map to Mongolz and the map to Legacy, they would have. That's the only thing that you could say is matching Simple's flawless major 1, but they still have a chance to run it back later this year if no one can put anything up to stop them. They might just keep winning. Who knows, man? But it'd be so interesting. But now putting the data stuff aside, I hope it was at least enjoyable talking piece and interesting to look at. You can find them on my socials. I'm very honored that I was able to attend this major in person and see many of my Counter-Strike friends and colleagues. Colleagues doesn't sound right. I don't work in Counter-Strike. But the people in the community that make Counter-Strike what it is, I was very happy to see many of you. I got to record this with a good some of my friends that I have met through Counter-Strike. And just, going out, getting drinks, overall being able to talk about Counter-Strike on a high level without having to explain anything to other people. And even a couple people having, I say, I was recognized once or twice by my content, and it was incredibly heartwarming to even have that happen. So thank you all very much for making it a phenomenal major. It's incredible to see coming out of it all the narratives going into the next season of the ascension of Vitality being completed. South America is actually back on the map with 2 highly competitive teams if they can get their shit together. North America is still quite a wasteland, but we're working on it. Who knows? Maybe we'll figure a team out to get their shit together by the next major. Halzerk will actually be able to play because Complexity would have actually done pretty well with Halzerk, even though Junior did do a serviceable job. He ended up just over the blue section, just over the line into the green section. He actually did a far better job he did better than Wonderful, but he had less games to play. So whatever. I'm going to continue to improve my database structure and hopefully make improvements on the types of content that I can deliver. I hopefully will also be able to one day, work at a event in Counter-Strike, no matter how small, and bring my love of speaking about it and data and understanding how teams play to you guys. I'm hopeful to, again, in the future, I'm going to get the heat map stuff going. It just takes a long time, and I want to have a lot of them out so that way I can use it as a talking point for progression over the course of an event or use it to highlight different temporal ideas. And yeah, this ended up being quite a long one, but after giving you nothing for a while, I thought I had to give something high effort. If you have anything you'd want to let me know, or if there's anything you thought was interesting, please let me know down below. If you liked any of this, please consider subscribing, and have a great rest of your day. I have been CJ.